Eleanor, by the Wandering Feather, Chapter 4, Chaos and Despair.
In the cave we stayed for a few days. My poor daughter, what kind of life is this for her? As I sat in the darkness, I nursed her with my breast. Tears flowed down my eyes like waterfalls, and a dark thought came to my mind. The thoughts became louder. The thoughts screamed,
Drown her! Drown her! Drown your daughter, you wicked wretch!
Was it a thought or was it a sinister spirit? Regardless, this time I will not obey. All the war in my mind went on. Suddenly rage resurfaced in the depths of my soul. I took my daughter out to a road and I waited for some settler to pass by so I could rob them of their horse and wagon. I waited on the outskirts of New Amsterdam until night. When night came, I put my daughter to sleep and set her in a pile of hay in the wagon, and I rode into town, screeching and setting the whole town on fire. I laughed, starting with the house of the maid's family. The strangest thing was, as the houses were burning, there were no screams and there were no people running onto the streets. They must have been burned to ashes in their sleep. So off into the night I rode with my daughter as the fires I lit were blazing behind me and the smoke could be seen for miles. My next journey took me to a French settlement. I did not speak any French, so I spoke to no one. I traded a shopkeeper for a room to rest, and my mission began. I could not care for my daughter. In the morning, I went to the marketplace in the middle of the settlement. I had my sweet daughter with me while I sat and watched the passerbys. This very wealthy woman walked by me, and I thought, she is the one to raise my daughter. As I kept watching her, she left my sight, so I got up to follow her from a distance. She had 2 children already, and by the look of them, they were too snooty for my liking. So I walked away, and in an alley, I heard the cries of a young woman giving birth, and I walked up to the doorway to see. There were 3 ladies rushing to attend to the young woman in labor. I stood there for around 15 minutes to find the young woman's child was choked dead by the umbilical cord. My heart broke for her as she looked at her dead daughter and began to cry. Thank goodness there is a woman worthy enough to raise my sweet Ainsworth. I walked up slowly to the crying young woman. I did not speak French, but I spoke with my hands. The midwife took the crying mother's dead baby from her arms, and I drew near to her with my own daughter. I wiped the young girl's tears and placed my daughter in her arms. The lady looked at me with compassionate, bright eyes and said something in French I did not understand. I responded to her with signs, telling her to keep my daughter, and I told the young girl the baby's name is Ainsworth. I kissed my baby one last time, and I, with a broken heart, walked back to the room I rented. The pain I bear is so great, but I rightly deserve it, since death and chaos follow me. This time, I did my first and last good deed. I sat on my bed in my room and thought maybe I will visit the young girl one more time. Suddenly, I heard yelling from the street, and I got up to look out onto the road. It seems the husband of the young girl was out trying to find me, so I packed my things and left out the back door. I was back on the roads again. This time, I will not dare go to any town, village, or settlement. I could not bear any more death. I did not want to be wicked anymore. So I will go deep into the forest and build a cabin for myself and live out the rest of my days. If my people and ancestors are forgotten, so be it. We were not great if we caused the world to hate us. Years were passing by like sand in an hourglass. I continued my practice in my lonely cabin. Instead of working for the wicked spirits, I started working for the spirits of light. I healed the forest when it became sick. I helped all living animals, and I lived in peace. Then one early morning, I heard a knock on my door. Oh, did someone find me? I lived far from people. I looked out the small window and saw a beautiful young lady. If my eyes were telling the truth, she looked just like my mother at a younger age. So I did not sense a threat. I opened the door and said, "Hello, dear. What brings you here? And how did you find my humble house in the woods?" The young girl replied, "It was not hard to find your cabin, as there is a new settlement near here." I was stunned to find that the world of people was growing closer to me. So I answered her, "So, you say a settlement. How far?" "What do you want with me, young girl?" What the young girl said made my heart skip a beat. "I am Ainsworth, your daughter." "My daughter, you say? I have no daughter." I told the young girl to leave. A tear escaped my eye, and the young girl was about to leave, but she turned and saw it. "A tear has betrayed you, and now the truth. You are my mother." The young girl then made herself at home, as if my home belonged to her. I then said to her in a motherly voice, "So, if I am your mother, then you must help me around here." The girl looked at me in shock. "You have some explaining to do, mother. The people who raised me told me that you appeared like an angel to them, saving them from despair. I do not blame you for your choice in doing so." "Oh, my sweet daughter, I could not care for you. Please understand. For your own well-being, I needed to give you away." "Please tell me, were they good parents to you?" "They were good parents and raised me well, but always I had visions of you and nightmares haunted me. I could tell the people who raised me were not my parents. Always your face shone in my mind." I began to weep. "Ainsworth, it is true, you are my daughter, flesh of my flesh, blood of my blood. I too thought of you often. So now it seems as life is back on track. I built my daughter a room, and she stayed a few weeks with me. I did not want to expose her to the craft, nor put my pains upon her. So for a while now I lived with my daughter and felt as if she has been with me all along. I taught her how to tend the garden, how to heal the creatures of the forest, and how to cook. At night I combed her hair, and we told stories as we laid outside looking at the stars. A month had passed. My daughter was like a grown baby. She was 18 at this time. She then told me she wanted to leave, that it was enough for her to see me as long as she has, and that she wanted to meet me before she became a nun. A nun? I couldn't believe it. She saw my expressions, and I told her in a motherly voice, "I am no Christian. Why do you want to be a nun?" My daughter stood up and walked to the cupboards in the kitchen and said, "Of course you're not a Christian. You're a witch." She opened the cupboard and out came bones, potions, and my book of symbols. "Ainsworth, my sweet daughter, you are druid in blood, just as your mother and your grandmother, and all your ancestors before us. My daughter then grabbed her things and said, "My mother, I do not deny you the title as my mother, but you are a witch, and the settlers are coming closer. They burn witches. For your sake, leave." So without another word, my daughter left and never said goodbye, nor did she tell me where she was going. Sadness crept back into my life and consumed my joy once again.